Welcome back, everyone. Well, we've been talking about PP and taxes. Now we're going to talk about death and taxes. You know, my next guest has been on with me several times. I have with me Sandy Greenlee, and she's the owner of Angels Cremation and Burial. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Carol. I enjoy being here.
Thank you. Death and taxes, they seem to go together.
Especially this time of year, and today would have been tax day, other than they were nice to us and they
pushed it out a month, right? So, let's talk a little bit about you. And, the fact is that what you talk about is really people needing to plan. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to just open that. I've been kind of talking a little bit today, but you own a mortuary. How long have you owned your mortuary?
I've owned the mortuary since July of 2005.
So since 2005, you know this pretty well. Yet you yourself just went through a loss. You've been through a lot of losses, but this one was a biggie. Your husband, right? And but I want you to talk a little bit about your experience, even though you, of all people, who know a lot.
Well, we thought we were really well prepared because we had all the funeral arrangements made. We had the casket picked out. We had the music. My husband picked out his own music. And he'd had his burial plot for years and years and years. I'll be honest, it wasn't nice to have it at Christmas time because he wanted to go to Wyoming where it's snowy and cold. We thought we had all the passwords down. We thought we had all the paperwork down. Everything was put in both of our name, his social security number. Boy, did I have a rude awakening because I went, for example, to shut off his cell phone. And they said, "What's his password?" I don't know what his password is. I have a death certificate. I have my name and social security number on it. What do you mean a password? Well, they laughed at me and said, "Well, we can't shut off your phone until you get a password." And the sweet lady who was a manager of the office where I was at, she called them to begin with. And as she called them, they said, "I'm sorry, we can't talk to you. We have to talk to her." And she said, "Well, she's standing right here." "Well, you need to hang up the office phone and call on her cell phone." I could not believe it. So we'd been sitting there for 10 or 15 minutes on hold to start with on the office phone. Now we're going to be on hold for another 10 or 15 minutes on the cell phone. And then they say, "Well, we have to do all this stuff so that we can have you shut off the phone." The ironic thing was when I got back to the office, there was this email. My husband was buried because that was his choice, and they wanted a cremation certificate. I was like, well, good luck in getting one of those. I guess I own a mortuary. I can forge one, but that's not my style. So anyway, after about a week, I was finally able to get the phone shut off. Now, they told me they couldn't shut it off because they had to do all this paperwork. And I thought to myself, if I didn't pay the blessed bill, I bet you could get it shut off really fast.
Right.
And so then they told me there would be no more money taking out. There would be no more funds, no more bills. Needless to say, last week when I got a bill for $130, I exploded. Mm-hmm. And they assured me they were going to write it off, but it would take another month to get that to that. I just think, I was prepared in so many ways. It was something we'd planned for. He was sick for 2 years. We really knew what was coming. It was a little bit of an eye-opener. Mm-hmm. Then we had the Social Security. I wasn't concerned. I don't live on his check. Thank the dear Lord for small favors. I'm still independent. I pay most of the bills because my husband was handicapped. And so I wasn't concerned. He had money in his checking account, money in his savings account, money in overdraft protection. He had a couple of bills coming out of his check automatically. I thought, you know what, I'll deal with that later. It's Christmas. It's burial time. I'm overwhelmed. The mortuary is really busy. So needless to say, and my daughter got his cell phone because she needed a phone, and so we just thought, give it to her. It's a good phone. Dad had just bought it. So she was getting dinged every time, and she would call me and say, "Mom, they just put Dad's Social Security check in the bank." And I said, "Well, good." And then she called me back less than 30 minutes later and said, "Mom, they just took Dad's money out of Social Security." So I thought, well, I guess I'm forced to call Social Security. And so I called Social Security, and because my husband and I lived we lived together, we were married for 51 years, but in his later years, he liked to be a spendthrift. I still like to be thrifty and more reserved, so we just found it was easier to have 2 different checking accounts. He had his things, and I had my things. My name was on everything, his name was on everything, so we weren't very concerned about it. Well, I didn't know his checking account number because he does everything electronic. I do everything on paper and pencil because I'm an old lady and I believe in paper and pencil. I couldn't get an appointment because I didn't have a Social Security, because I didn't have his checking account number. Well, thank the dear Lord, I own a mortuary, and Social Security calls me from time to time. So I asked them, how can I make an appointment? My husband has passed away. And she said, oh, well, I can do that for you. But the first lady, when I called, would not do that after being on hold for 45 minutes. So my husband died on 7th of March. They put his money in on the 20th of December. They took it out on the 20th of December. I was able to finally get an appointment on the 9th of January, which they told me they had to send me out a form that I needed to fill out, mail in to them with my copy of my driver's license and a copy of my marriage license and a copy of the death certificate. So I did all of this. I mailed it all in to them. I was not willing to mail in my marriage license. It's an original. I've had it for 51 years. I was not willing to part with it. And because they wouldn't guarantee me that I would get it back, I said, well, I'll mail it to you certified. Well, we're not mailing it back to you certified. And I said, well, then you're not getting it. How about that? I mean, I was really obstinate, and I can be a real pain when it comes to what I want and what I'm willing to give up. So anyway, I mailed all that back in. I finally got his check on March 8th. Now, I am so sorry, and my heart aches. In fact, I had to apologize to the Social Security lady because I went off on her, saying, what about these people that depend on this check? They just lost their money. They've lost their grocery money. They've lost their car payment. They've lost their house payment. They're going to get kicked out in the street. And she said, ma'am, I am just an employee. So I had to apologize, but I was so rude and I was so upset, not because of me, but because of all of the many people that I serve, and I know how desperate they are to get that check. And so I think we all need to call our senators. We need to write to Social Security and say, hey, these elderly people are the backbone of our country. They have served our country in wars. They have worked hard to make ends meet. They have been the backbone of America. And so we need to take care of them when they get to this point, not abuse them and use them. I am sorry, December 20th until March 8th for somebody who is desperate for money. I mean, a lot of these people struggle because they've gone now from one income, or from two incomes to one, and now they don't even get an income for 3 months. There is a sad story there.
Well, I'll tell you what, here's the thing about all of this. The moral of this story is to be prepared. Now, you are prepared, but we need to really double check and know what we need. You know, we really need to figure out what it really is we really need, and to have that. And this is, I think, where you're going to come in even more so with your clients, because you went through this. Now you're going to make sure that every single person that works with you, that when they're doing their planning, you're going to kind of make sure that they know some things because you went through it.
Well, and I have the paper from Social Security, so they don't have to wait for them to mail it out. I can just hand it to them and they can fill it out and then they can mail it in. So we're one step ahead.
There you go.
And if Social Security doesn't like it, I guess they're going to have to knock on my door and tell me I can't do that anymore.
So let me just say this. Let me ask about the cemetery now again. So there's different things. What people want to know what the difference between, doing, how to choose a cemetery. Let's talk about that real quickly before we go to a break.
Well, sometimes when you choose a cemetery, it's because that's where you want to be buried. That was the case with my husband. He wanted to be married in Casper with his son, and that was all. There was no question about it. But sometimes money is a factor. Sometimes where you live is a factor. Sometimes convenience for those that are coming. VA cemetery is free, so it just depends. There's a lot of different things you can look at: money, location, those types of things.
But also, here's the thing too: you might decide that you don't want to be buried and you want to be cremated, and a cremation is a cremation no matter where you go, correct?
That's right. Or that you can bury cremains if you'd like. Cemeteries have niches,
that's right,
they have
too.
in-ground. So, some people, when they're especially if they're Catholics, it's part of their religion to bury the cremains.
Okay.
So again, you're right back to finding that place that you want to have them, because you can't just take them off the mantle or take them off the bookshelf and take them with you if you have them buried. So, like our son was buried in Wyoming because we were only going to be in Arizona for 2 years. Well, 35 years later, we're still here. My husband is in Wyoming being buried with his son because that was his great desire.
So it's all about the planning, and what we're going to do is we're going to go to a break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk further a little bit about this. This information here is super cool. I love this show for that reason. And it gives people to get educated a little bit about things that we don't always think about, and putting our heads in the sand when it comes to certain things. Their phone number is 480-962-6435, which is 480-962-96 That's what it is. We're going to go to a break. When we come back, we're going to talk further.
I was telling you, let's have a break, right?
What's that?
So was he trying to motion?
Yeah,
you to have a break?
well, I have to do it on a certain time, and if I don't, they, you know. But I've been doing it a long time. But still, you know, if you go off, it's hard on them, you know. So okay, let's do this. I got to get your website out. Now you got your story out. I thought that was very good. Did you like that? And I loved the way that you ended that with the, you know, about the seniors and.
I do. It makes me very angry. And I mean, and I had to apologize to the lady at the Social Security office because I really went off on her. I was screaming at her.
Well, you know, I understand that because I've through this. Come on in.
Just want to remind you there is a live show.
Yeah.
After this.
And so, right with this, with what was I talking about now? I lost my train of thought. With what happened to me, I thought I was going to be a basket case. So if this happened to me 10 years ago, I probably would have been yelling and screaming and sweating and crying and blah, blah, blah. But I have learned to train myself a little bit better because I've learned to get there. But still, there's times when you're like, really? You know, you're on the phone and you just can't believe it.
For me, I was not yelling for me. I was yelling for the 150
Right.
people that I see every month that are struggling.
Well, this password thing is really, it's got to hurt a lot of people, especially us older folks, because we don't know.
My
We don't
husband
know.
gave me passwords, but he changed them and didn't tell me. Or they weren't the right ones because they changed them.
Yeah.
You know, when you get older, and my husband, the last 6 months of his life was losing his brain, but he swore up and down until the day he died, these were the right passwords. Well, they weren't the right passwords. So what do you do now?
Yeah.
And he would tell me it was 5 digits, and they would tell me it was 4. So I left out the first one, left out the second one, left the last one. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, it's
I'm tired of playing the game.
yeah, it's pretty tough, and I that's why I say I don't know that I like that, and I'm sure I wonder if things will change, revert back a little bit. I don't know. I don't know.
When I had a death certificate in my hand, I thought I had my by the tail. Oh, I have another story I could tell you. I went to his bank, and they told me the guy, when I met him, the guy that was over on the side, he said, "Go take your money out and then come back and hand me that death certificate."
Are you struggling with debt?
And when I went back, and I said, "My name's on the account." He said, "I know. That's why I'm telling you, go take the money out."
Huh? Interesting.
So I did.
Did you?
I took $6,000 out and left $9 in.
Something I would do.
I mean, I left $9 in, so they, the guy
Just
would
in
have
case.
reason to cancel the
Right.
credit. But I mean, I think this man knows something I don't know, and he can't tell me because it's against, company policy for him to tell me.
Sure.
But I was grateful for him.
Yeah.
Because if I'd had that $6,000 tied up when I wanted to use it to pay bills, I would not have been a happy person.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been me I was yelling at then. It would
Well,
not have been.
Oh, here.
Francis
Okay.
Sanders.
Here we go. Welcome back. We're talking with Sandy Greenlee. She's the owner of Angels Cremation and Burial. Death and taxes today. It's been a lot of different things. PP and taxes and death and taxes. It's all crazy day today. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about now somebody has, they've decided that they're going to do a burial. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What next?
Well, then the next thing is to find a mortuary that's going to take care of your services. And mortuaries can vary in price $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000. So if you're concerned about money, then you want to check around. If you're concerned about location, find the one that's closest to you. And then once you get there, you're going to have to pick out a casket. Now, there is no laws or rules or regulations that you have to buy the casket from the mortuary. It's usually easier, it's more convenient. And so when you start looking at a casket book, casket companies are very smart. They put the expensive caskets in the front, the less expensive caskets in the back. So I've taught my families to start at the back. When they hit their budget, when they find what they like, to stop. why do you want to tempt yourself with something that you really don't want to spend that much money on?
Right, and you've even said to people, I know this, when they're talking to you, you know, do you really want to spend that type of money on something that you're going to look at for 30 minutes?
I do. I tell them that a viewing is 2 hours.
And that's
a
what I
service
love
is an
about you.
hour. And so, how much? You know, if you buy a $3,000 casket, that's $1,000 an hour. I hope you enjoy that too. And there's basically 3 different types of casket. There's cloth covered, there's metal, and there's wood. And so, take advantage to look at all of them. I mean, when a lot of people hear cloth covered, they think, ugh, what's that? And then when they look at them, it's like, oh, that's not bad at all.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a difference of, you know, $600 or $700. Now, most of my families are all watching their dollars, and so I do my best to teach them how to watch their dollars, how to keep their dollars in their pocket and not keep their dollars in my pocket or somebody else's pocket. If your sky is the limit, by all means, start at the front of the book and find the casket you want.
Right.
But if you're watching your dollars or you want to be conservative, start at the back of the book and go to the front.
Now, your website is angelscremationandburial.com. Your phone number is 480-962-6435, which is 96 Angel. You know, have a consultation. She's been doing this for a long time, 20 years. And the thing about it is that, okay, you've also made it affordable for people. You're all about that. That's you as a person, so
Yes.
that's how you run your business.
Right.
And I think that's awesome that you do that. Not everybody does have that pocketbook, and you know, today I think a lot of people do want to keep things so that the kids can have as much money, right? Isn't it?
Well, at today's age, you don't know where the next dollar is coming from. Our
Right.
country's been having some real struggles, and so personally, I would like to watch my dollars stay in my pocket and make sure that my kids have an education, my grandkids have an education, they have money to
Right.
live in a house, because everything is skyrocketing. I mean, I feel sorry for kids in this day and age. My husband and I bought our first house, and we didn't have any problems, but nowadays I look at my kids and I think, how do you come up with a down payment to buy a house?
Right.
It's so much money.
And forget the house. Look at the cemeteries and the burials here. I mean, you have made it.
Right.
Everything is expensive. Everything is, and that's what I love about you is that you understand that with people. And I want to ask you the difference between a burial in a vault and an outer burial container.
Well, when you're buried, there's no laws, but there are rules. And I don't know very many cemeteries that don't have a rule that you have to have an outer burial container, which is a cement box, or a vault, which is a cement box with some pretty paint and paraphernalia on it, things that are on it. And some cemeteries require you to have a vault. And so when you're looking at pricing of cemeteries, you want to consider all of those possibilities. For example, at our mortuary, a cement box is $750. You're never going to see it. It's in the ground. They put the casket in it. They put the lid on it after you leave. If you do a vault, you're talking about $1,100. And you're still not going to see it because it's still going to be in the ground. They're going to put the lid on it. So if you're feeling guilty and you want to spend more money, or you just want what's the best, or money is not an issue, by all means, buy a vault. But if not, ask the cemetery if they accept a grave box. The same is true when you're picking a cemetery. You're not only looking at the price of the land, you're looking at the price of opening, closing, you're looking at the price of perpetual care, you're looking at the price of the headstone, whether it is granite or marble.
It's
or,
making me like the fact that I'm going to be cremated more and more and more.
or whether it has to be bronze, because all of those things all add up. I mean, there's 2 different mortuaries. They have the exact same price tag for their land. But by the time you get through adding everything, adding the extra vault and adding the bronze headstone, adding the opening, closing, adding the perpetual care, you're talking about almost $3,000 more.
Her phone
And
number
so
to
be
call.
careful.
Yeah, be careful. You want to be able to make sure that you speak to somebody who knows what they're talking about and shop around, right? Ask the right questions and have a conversation with Sandy, because Sandy is going to make sure that you know what you're looking for, what to do, the right things. If you've got the money for it, she says, go for it. But if not, you want to make sure that she can help everybody out there save their pennies if they can. That phone number to call her, it's 480-962-6435, which is 96 Angel. Her website is Angels cremationandburial.com. I like your website because you have made it so simple for everybody too. One of the other things that I wanted to ask you is about the headstones. Are there different types of them?
Yes, there's granite, there's marble, there's bronze, and there's probably more that I don't know about. Some cemeteries require a certain color, they require a certain size, they require a certain thickness. That's because they want to be able to sell you the headstone. They don't want you to be able to shop around. And so you want to really make sure that when you're checking out the cemetery, that you're checking everything, and especially headstones, because headstones can have a very big difference in price. For example, if you come to our mortuary and you want a basic 12 by 24 granite, it's $450. If you want a bronze, we're talking about $1,600. That's a big difference. And people say, well, bronze will outlast granite. Well, you might check out the Mesa Cemetery. They've got some headstones there that's been there since the 1800s, and they still look beautiful and nice.
That phone number again, it's 480-962-6435. You know, don't put your heads in the sands with all of this. It's about planning. We're talking about planning and knowing what you want and getting it, maybe being a little smart with your pennies.
Well, and that's true. And like I said, I had an advantage because I work in a mortuary. I've seen a lot. I've learned a lot. I still was kind of snowballed when my husband died. It was like, oh no, what I did not cross and what T did I not cross. And we knew about it for 2 years, and probably many more years than that. But I mean, definitely we were told 2 years. And that's about what it was 2 years. And so people that get hit with this over the head, like with a motorcycle accident, a car accident, a sudden illness, no notice at all, plan ahead. I have a rule in my office, if you work for me, you better have a power of attorney. I don't care if you're 16 or you're 65. A power of attorney is a blessing in disguise when you really need it, because you can't have somebody come back to life and sign it.
Yeah, and look what we're dealing with. We were talking a little bit about passwords here and how difficult it is. Everything has become difficult today. I know all of us. I sound like my father and my mother now today. And I say, God, you know, I sound like, because I say the same thing all the time. Life has really become difficult. And as somebody said to me one day, well, you know, it's as difficult as you make it. Well, they've made it, you know, some of this stuff they've made more difficult.
Electronics makes my life very difficult. And you can say it makes it easier, but in my world, it is much more difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, when I took care of my mom and my dad and my stepmothers, I walked in with a death certificate and took care of everything in about 15 minutes. I've been standing in places and talking on the phone and going to websites and filling out this and filling out that and doing something else, and then had to wait for 2 or 3 days to get a result.
You know, I guess I just think that everybody thinks, well, we're retired, we got nothing else to do but to do that. And certainly you don't, and all of us really don't. And it's all about planning. I think this is the most important thing that she wanted to get out for everybody, and to give you, you know, some food for thought, right? But you also do cremation, all right?
Right.
I want to talk about that real quickly before we leave, because to me, I mean, I think more and more people might be going that. What do you find?
It's so much less expensive. Maricopa County usually is about 70 to 75% cremation compared to burials. You can have a cremation with a traditional funeral. Instead of going to the cemetery, you go to the crematory. And so a lot of people don't know that, and they still want that traditional funeral, and so they do it that way. But you have a lot of options. The more important thing is we always like to think it's going to happen to somebody else tomorrow. It could happen to us today. And so whether you're 16 or you're 65 or you're 95, there's one thing you're not going to get out of life is alive. And so be prepared. It'll save you a lot of stress in the end.
The phone number to call her, it's 480-962-6435. That's 96 Angel. Go up on her website. And she's very transparent as well. Everything is there. It's Angels Cremation and Burial.com. Anybody that has put in their heads in the sands with this, don't. Listen to this great information that Sandy brought to us today. Things that you don't even know about. I didn't know that they had different widths and things about the, you know, the headstones and all of that. Everything costs money today, and everything is expensive. Doesn't really have to be. Give Sandy a call. 480-962-6435.